Hello, and welcome to Earth Echoes with Amber Fields. Today I am in the beautiful ponderosa pine, oak juniper woodlands of the Mogollon Highlands, and I am here to read a piece titled Before the I Am by Jason Gray. The word divine has been buried beneath centuries of dogma, mistranslation, and manipulation. Today, when most hear the word, they immediately attach it to an external deity, a system of belief, or an authority figure clothed in robes and rituals. But none of that is the divine. The very origin of the word comes from the Latin divinus, or of the gods, and deeper still from deus, God. Even these are surface terms, layered over something older, more primordial, and beyond language. Before language, before the first declaration of I am, there was the presence that could not be spoken, only known. That knowing is what humanity has been reaching for since the beginning, but it has been overlaid with labels, stories, and hierarchies that sever us from the original remembrance. The divine is not a being, not a father in the clouds, not a set of laws written on tablets, and not a church to be entered on Sundays. The divine is the raw presence before thought. It is the silent flame from which all I ams emerged. The tragedy of history is that humans forgot this, and instead of seeking within, they were trained to project outward. Systems were built that told us what the divine is supposed to mean, who is allowed to speak for it, and how it must be worshipped. In truth, these were control structures designed to steal sovereignty from the soul and redirect it into the hands of institutions. Pre-programmed belief versus true knowing. Most people carry an image of the divine that is not their own. It has been inherited from parents, schools, cultures, holy books, and preachers. This is programming. The divine that people defend so fiercely is often nothing more than a hand-me-down concept wrapped in emotion and fear. That is why wars have been fought, empires built, and atrocities committed in the name of God. People cling to what they were told instead of seeking what is truly there. True knowing of the divine does not come from reading another scripture. It does not come from quoting prophets or priests. It comes only from the deep inward search, where the layers of programming dissolve and what remains is a direct experience. No mediator, no interpreter, no external authority. Just the soul meeting its own source. And here lies the paradox. What you find is not separate from you. The divine is not out there. It is the pulse within you that cannot be extinguished. The imperative of inner search. Why is it imperative to search within? Because everything else is illusion. If you spend your life chasing the divine outside yourself, you will only encounter mirrors, shadows, and empty echoes. You will join the ranks of the blind following the blind. You will kneel before statues and men, recite borrowed words, and never once taste the flame that was burning in your chest the entire time. The search within is not optional. It is the very purpose of existence. To ignore it is to waste the gift of life. To embrace it is to remember who and what you are. When you find the divine within, everything changes. Fear collapses. Authority loses its grip. Death is no longer a terror. You recognize yourself as the one carrying the flame, and suddenly no book, no prophet, no truth teller can enslave you. This is why so few walk this path, because it requires absolute courage to strip away everything you were told and stand naked before the infinite silence. Writing our own stories. The greatest theft ever committed against humanity was not material, but spiritual. It was the theft of the narrative. We were told who we are, where we come from, what the divine is, and what our destiny must be. These stories were imposed upon us to keep us small, obedient, and afraid. But the truth is this: no one else can write your story. If you are living under the shadow of another's narrative, you are living a lie. To reclaim the divine is to reclaim authorship. It is to stop following and start creating. You must write your own scripture, carve your own myth, and embody your own remembrance. The divine was never meant to be followed. It was meant to be lived. And every soul has a unique expression of that living flame. To deny your own story in favor of someone else's is to betray the very purpose for which you exist. Stop being followers. Humanity is drowning in followers. Followers of religion, movements, gurus, political parties, and even influencers. The follower mindset is slavery disguised as belonging. The divine cannot be followed. It cannot be reduced to a slogan, a creed, or a hashtag. It can only be remembered in the silence of your own being. This is why every true teacher, every awakened one, ultimately said the same thing: the kingdom is within you. But instead of listening, people built temples in their names, wrote laws in their memory, and made idols of their image. The divine was buried under devotion to another human. To stop being a follower is the first step of sovereignty. To seek the flame within is the only path that leads anywhere real. And to live from that place is to embody the divine itself, not as a title, but as your natural state. The divine is not a story told in holy books. It is not a name to be defended, nor a being to be feared. It is the silence before the first word, the fire before the first thought, the breath before the first I am. And it is within you, waiting. Every moment you search outward, you betray yourself. Every moment you look inward, you come closer to remembrance. Write your own story. Live your own flame. Stop following. Begin being. The divine is not out there. The divine is you. Jason Gray. There's so much that I connect to in that piece, and I could say so much about it, but I do want to say just a few things. I really relate to the theft of the narrative. When I was little, I remember somebody asking me, an aunt or something, and my brothers, asking us what we wanted to be when we grew up. And my brothers were like, a baseball player, things like that. And I remember thinking, like, what am I going to be? I don't even understand this question. I just am. And yet I felt inferior because that's what I was thinking. And I felt so small in the world. I remember learning how complicated the human world is and thinking, how could I ever contribute anything? Like, everything's already been discovered and done. And I realize now that that was a theft of the narrative in my life. And through time, things happened to me that really spurred great leaps in awakening. And one of those was getting Lyme disease back in about 2009. And through that, realizing, that there was a big separation between what I was experiencing as someone with Lyme and what the Center for Disease Control and the government were telling me was true, and mainstream medical doctors, and going on a deep search trying to figure out what was going on and discovering a lot of hidden truths there, and waking up and thinking, wait, this is so strange. Like, why is the mainstream narrative so different from the truths that I'm finding? And that was the first time that I really got the courage to live my life differently, and to not get a regular job. I always pictured myself like getting a job as a forester, like getting a job and working for the Forest Service, and having a retirement that then, I'd work my whole adult life and then I could retire, and that would be security. And realizing that that might just be a lie. It might be a false narrative. And I did get the courage to be self-employed and to not go that route. And I'm so glad that I did. And then there was another big leap in awakening when COVID hit, and that whole drama unfolded, and realizing once again that there was being a narrative pushed on humanity, and it didn't really match reality. And then looking back on my whole life, realizing that slowly through time, I have discovered, as a child and as a young adult, now an adult, I've discovered slowly that I do carry the flame within me, that flame of consciousness, and the spark of divinity is within me, not outside of me. And I think that things that have really helped me in discovering that is separating myself from the noise of the world. As a child growing up, I would go for long walks with my German Shepherds, and anytime I experienced hurt or difficulties in life, I would go for those walks and just think and contemplate and process. And I realize now how important that was for me and my development as a sovereign being. And as a forester, I've spent thousands and thousands of hours alone out in the woods. And that's really given me a lot of insight as well, to be outside of society and in a place that's so real and pure, and discovering that I could feel so safe there. There's nothing to be afraid of out here. Just last week I saw a big mountain lion, a male, a tomcat, and it was just a quarter mile from here. And I'm still not afraid. I'm not afraid to go for a walk in the dark with my dog. We don't need to be afraid to come out here. And so, that has really helped in me discovering that inner flame and nurturing it and kindling it. And I've also discovered that I really need that time alone. I've come to find that I am someone that Jung would call an undifferentiated, a person with undifferentiated intuitive perception. And that just means that I have, it kind of means that I'm an empath, but it also means that I have the ability to read people's micro expressions and sense hidden emotions in people that might not be verbalized or on the surface, and to perceive psychological patterns that others can't see, and unconscious contents of others. I can feel them and I can sense them, and it's really made me sensitive to the world and to being around people. So I need a lot of alone time to process what's going on in my life and to determine the right path forward and what feels truly aligned for me. So, yeah, I guess that's all just to say that I hope that that humanity on a larger scale can really learn that skill of getting to know themselves and determining who they are, and that we all have that inner spark of divinity within us, and we don't need to look to a God in heaven for it, because it's truly right here. So I hope you enjoyed that reading, and I hope you enjoy being in nature with me on these recordings, and I thank you very much for being here.